Okay, so here goes. This is video one of who knows how many. Today is January 31st, 2019, and this is actually about 3 weeks, a little over 3 weeks since the surgery and the event. So I'll go into a little bit of the background story and then tell you what our plan is for this video documentary series. I guess we can call it that. So hello everyone, I'm Brandon Kale and this is my lovely wife Carrie Kale. And our lives changed forever on January 7th, Monday, January 7th, 2019. It was a fairly typical day for us. I worked in my Fairmont, West Virginia office, which is about an hour and a half from my home. So I drove there in the morning, arrived, worked a regular day, and left around 4:30. Came back to my home, which is just outside of Latrobe in Derry Township. I stopped to pick up Carrie's vehicle because she took the kids in our family vehicle to a church function, which is down in Irwin, about 45 minutes or so away from our home. I met her there at roughly 7 o'clock. At this time, I felt perfectly fine. I felt no symptoms. Nothing indicated to me that there was a problem. We actually drove over to Walmart to pick up a few things and came back at roughly 8 o'clock to pick up the children from their function, which was to end roughly at 8:15. At this time, Carrie took in our young daughter, Tia, to use the restroom, and she was going to pick up the other children. I was sitting in the parking lot, which overlooked a shopping center, and noticed that the lights surrounding me just looked odd. The best way that I can describe it as the lights were shifting. It was like they're moving right and left, and I felt a little bit disoriented. At the time, I was on a very strict diet. I was trying to lose some weight, so I thought maybe I have low blood sugar or something. So I got out of the car just to take a walk and get some fresh air. Carrie came out of the church and saw me walking around. She said, "Brandon, what are you doing?" And I said, "I don't know, I just don't feel quite right." I said, "Maybe it's low blood sugar." She said, "Well, I have a drink in my truck." It was a vitamin water. So I took a drink, and I felt a little bit better after a minute or so. So I sat back down, and Carrie ended up getting all of the children. For those of you who don't know us quite so well, when I say she went to get all the children, that's all 10. Though I guess just 7 of them were inside. We had 3 of them outside, or 4 of them outside. So math is wrong. 6 were inside, 4 were in the van.
Some of them.
Yeah.
Somewhere.
So you'll see throughout this series that Carrie and I, and the way that we express ourselves, the way that we tell stories, are very different. But I think we're compatible. I think the details I leave out, she fills in, and the details, the things that she describes, sometimes I'd like to interject a little bit. So hopefully we can do this and do it in a way that people understand, and it all makes sense. So, long story short, if I actually can say that because it's already a long story, the children all came out, and we actually had 3 of our friends' children we were taking home that night. We have a 15-passenger van, so 13 children, that's no problem. I was going to be taking them all home, and I felt safe enough that I was going to drive. Carrie, at the time, was working at UPS as a supervisor for the night shift, which usually she got started around 9:30 and worked until 3:30, 4, sometimes a little bit later. It was right after peak season, but still kind of on the end of, right after the holidays. Again, this is January 7th. So I started the drive home, and driving on Route 30 East, got through the area where the turnpike is in Irwin, and got up to, those of you who are from this area would know, DeLallo's. And there's a light by DeLallo's, and as I was driving, I did feel like, no, I don't know if I'm quite right. But at this time, I think I started to lose some sense of rationality and just felt a little bit disoriented. But I guess the moment when I realized something was definitely wrong, my son Trey was sitting next to me in the passenger seat, and he said, "Dad, why are you stopped?" And I kind of looked at him, and I looked up and realized that the light was green. It had been green the whole time, and I came to a stop. At that time, I realized I need to get off the road. So I remember reaching around on the dash, like kind of fumbling around for the hazard lights. Thank God I found them, and I moved up and had enough wherewithal to realize where the shopping center was. And thank God I was able to safely cross 2 lanes of traffic, get into the shopping center, park, and I called Carrie, who had just had arrived at work in the parking lot. And you can probably tell this part of the story a little bit better than I could, as far as, Carrie's first thoughts were, of course, Brandon, you never call off sick. You never get sick whenever you have to go to work, but here you go, you get sick when I have to go to work. She was a little bit frustrated. And she said to me, if I'm going to come to get you, I'm taking you to the hospital. Now, normally, that's not something I want to do, and I would probably say, no, just get me home. I'll sleep it off. I'll be fine in the morning. But I guess at this point, I was far enough gone and not normal that I didn't resist. I said, okay, that's fine. You can take me to the hospital. So Carrie left, told her employer, I'm sorry, my husband's having some type of medical emergency. So she left UPS and drove probably about 15-20 minutes or so, found me in the parking lot, left her truck there, got in the van, and proceeded toward home. Now, again, we had our friends' 3 children, so we were planning to drop them off first. But as we were driving along Route 30, I was looking around and realizing I can't read the road signs. I can't read the signs on the side of the businesses. And then as we got closer and closer to where our friends lived, Carrie said to me, Brandon, and she was testing me. She knew that I knew quite well how to get to our friend's house, but she said, where do I turn here? And I remember just saying, I think we turn here. I'm not sure. And at this point, you realized that something wasn't right.
You were right, but whenever you said I think, and I knew that you would know. So when you said I think, I was like, no.
Yeah. And then this point in the story, things become a little bit sketchy to me. There were bits of the ride home that I don't remember at all. Some things stand out in my mind, parts of this ride home that I do remember. So we safely dropped off the 3 children, and we went home. Carrie's plan was to take our kids home. We contacted our friend and told her what was happening, so she planned to come over and watch our kids as Carrie took me to the emergency room. So we dropped the kids off at home, went to Latrobe Hospital, which is about 3 minutes from where we live. And again, don't remember that entire ride, but I do remember, I guess, the point at which we parked at the hospital, and Carrie came around to my side of the vehicle and opened the door to let me out. And I guess I just was sitting there in a daze, not fully realizing what was happening.
Okay, come on, get out. You said okay, and then you weren't getting out. Mm-hmm. So I went around to your side, and I was like, all right, Brandon, we're here. And you're like, okay, we're here, but where? That's fun.
Yeah, and so I remember, sort of walking in toward the emergency room, and then I stopped and I said, wait a second, I think I know where we are. We usually park in that spot. And the reference to where we usually park, the few times that we've had to take our children there for various reasons, there was a certain section of the emergency parking lot where we parked. So, I had some semblance of awareness. We walked into the emergency room reception area, and the last memory that I really have there is I thought, maybe I'm having a stroke. I just, from what I had learned previously about stroke victims and some of the symptoms they feel, I thought, maybe that's what this is. Maybe I'm having a stroke. And I guess I don't remember this, but Carrie has told me that was initially what the emergency room personnel thought, because I guess they yelled potential stroke victim and they went through their protocol.
Like said on the loudspeaker so you can hear it throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, so why don't you kind of take over from this point, because I'll add to it if you don't feel comfortable, but it's because at this point I was semi-conscious.
You just kept trying to read everything, and they were trying to wheel you back, and they were saying, "Sir, keep your hands in the wheelchair," and you kept you're like, "Oh, okay," and you would put your hands out again, like, "Sir, put your hands back in."
Because I guess I was trying to read whatever I saw on the wall.
You were trying to read it, look up and touch it and read it, it was real.
Mm-hmm.
And then she said, "You need to stay here because we're going to give him a CAT scan." And I said, "No." And she said, "Ma'am, you can't come back." And I was like, "I'm not leaving him, like in this state," because I knew there's something terribly wrong. And so she let me go back. And then whenever we went back, you were trying to read all the nurses' name tags, and you still couldn't.
Yeah.
Couldn't read
Although I do remember that there was one nurse, and I don't remember her name, and I'm not going to say her name.
I was saying,
but I remember seeing on her name tag the Excella logo, and I said, "Wait a second, you work for Excella Health?" And she's like, yes. And I said,
do.
"You have an S in your name." So at this point, I was, I guess, very childlike.
Very.
And so I remember that. And then I guess the next thing, they took me and they sat me on the CAT scan table.
And right when they sat you down, that's whenever you had your seizure.
I had a grand mal seizure, and I have no recollection of that. So a grand mal seizure, very violent seizure. In fact, it was violent enough where I didn't fall, but I managed to fracture two of my bones, the humerus in my left arm and then also the clavicle. And so Carrie estimated it maybe lasted 2 minutes or so. It was a rather violent and
time was
and
weird
long
at
seizure.
that. I don't know, was it longer? I don't know. Was it shorter? I don't know. But it felt like, if I had to take a good guess,
Okay.
I'd say 2.
Okay, so after the seizure, what happened?
They tried to get a CAT scan of you.
Okay.
And they laid you down, and you wouldn't cooperate. You kept moving. And then they finally then they said, "Ma'am, we're going to have to take him out of here, and we're going to have to put him under the anesthesia, and we're going to have to intubate him." And I said, no, I don't want to, because at this point, you were just dazed. You were just staring at, I don't even know what. People were screaming your name. You weren't listening. You were just not even here. And so they wanted to put you under like that, and I was just no, because what if he can't wake up? What if he doesn't come back out of it? Or what if he's stuck in this stage, in this phase right here? Mm-hmm. And the guy left the room, the doctor left the room, and he came back 2 minutes later, and he said, "Fine, we won't, but we'll try to do this, we have this halfway drug that we can give him, just to get him to stay still, because if he doesn't stay still, then we don't know what's wrong with him, we can't treat him, and he needs to be treated now." And so I said, okay, I was okay with that. And so they took you back, and I don't even think they actually needed to use it. I can't remember, either they said they did, or they only used part of it, or they didn't have to use it. I can't remember, because my mom was just gone. So they bring you back, and then they said, you have to wait a little bit for the results. And then we waited for the results. By this time, your mom, your dad, and your 3 sisters showed up, and we were.
Did you notify them? Yeah.
Yeah, I called them right whenever you had your seizure, and then they came out and they said, "Ma'am, the CAT scan shows that he has a mass on his brain that is swelling, and he needs to be life flighted to Presby now." And I was hyperventilating, couldn't control myself at that point, because didn't think that. I thought vertigo. That's what you read, you look it up. It says vertigo or inner ear things or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so that's whenever we got to talk to you, and you were talking to us, and you were saying, "My shoulder really hurts," and then you said you were trying to read because you wanted to make sure that you could read, and and your mom was there, and you're like, "Let me see, is there any literature for me to read?" And who says literature to read? I don't know, like something to read, a paper to read. I don't know, words to read, but is there any literature to read? Now, there were medical things, and so the answer pretty much was no. But anyway, and so
Yeah, and even though, you know, apparently I was conscious.
Yeah.
I have no memory of this particular time.
Yeah, and then they suited you up. They gave you a little talk about the airplane or whatever.
The helicopter.
Ride. And then you said you gave me the I love you sign. And then and that was at midnight.
Okay.
That was at midnight because I remember walking out of the hospital because we were going to drive down there.
Yeah.
And I looked at my phone. It was 12:02.
Yeah. So all of this transpired in a 4-hour period. And again, 8 p.m. that evening, I felt perfectly fine. Shortly thereafter was when the lights started shifting on me, became slightly disoriented, and then to the time where I was being life flighted to Presbyterian Hospital in Pittsburgh, it was about 4 hours. I actually have a very vague memory of being put into the helicopter and hearing the propeller, the rotors being turned on. I don't remember the flight at all. I don't remember arriving. But then I guess we'll kind of wrap up this part of the story with, so Carrie and my family left Latrobe Hospital, made their way down toward Oakland, and I guess I came to, and when I arrived at Presbyterian Hospital, because the neurosurgeon at this point was going over the images, the CAT scan or the MRI. I guess at this point
It was a CAT scan.
It was a CAT scan,
yeah.
And they did a CAT scan with contrast, I guess, to check for.
I don't think they did that yet.
Cancer? No.
No.
Well, but I thought that you told me that when.
I think he just was saying that from the initial CAT scan.
Okay, all right. So he had enough information
From that initial CAT scan.
From the initial CAT scan, and
because at that point you didn't have anything else done. They were not they didn't tell you anything else to be done. Mm-hmm. They waited for us to get there to say what your next rounds were.
Okay. But I guess at some point he had discussed with me the possibility of cancer, and what maybe possibility is maybe the best word. It was probability of cancer. He was saying 90 to 95%, and given, I can't begin to describe what my mental state was at that point in time, because again my memories are sketchy at best. But apparently I had enough. I was conscious enough where I was able to understand what he was telling me. When Carrie arrived, I asked her, "Did they tell you about the cancer?"
No, your mom and I walked in the room.
Okay.
And as soon as we walked in the room, you sat up, and you're like, "Did they tell you about the cancer?" We both gasped. I can't believe it's like blindsided again. First of all, you're going through these things, and then all of a sudden we hear that it's a mass on your brain that's causing swelling, and then you're life flighted, and then all of a sudden we get there and it's like cancer, and that didn't even register. That wasn't even whenever I think of mass, that's what I think of. It was didn't even think that was a possibility.
Right.
And then that's when the doctor turned around and he started explaining, and that was hard to comprehend.
Possibilities of what might happen. Yeah. So they determined at that point that I would need to have surgery to remove the mass. The surgery was subsequently scheduled for Wednesday, January 9th. And I'll kind of briefly go through all this. The surgery happened on Wednesday morning. Actually, early afternoon is when they finally were able to execute it.
But it was around 12:20 whenever I said, the pastor and I said goodbye, and that, we'll see you on the other side of this, and that's when they wheeled you away.
Right. Good thing you said the other side of this, not the other side. Yeah. So, anyway, so the surgery went well, about as well as could be expected. And some of this terminology is new to me, but they performed a recession of the tumor or resection. Yeah, probably wasn't a recession.
No.
Nobody receded. So anyway, a resection of the tumor, and they said that the neurosurgeon said he got 100% of it, which was successful, and really, in the weeks to follow, I've had very few symptoms or anything that I've noticed or my vision was affected, my motor skills were affected. They really haven't been very much. Very slight vision impairment that I've had thus far. the healing of the scar went smoothly, no infections. Anyway, I was released from the hospital Friday of that week and came home. But the journey had just begun because we knew that it was likely malignant, and we had to wait for the pathology results.
And the fact that we didn't even find out to the day that you were discharged that your shoulder was fractured.
Correct.
And partially dislocated.
Right. And so, this added the new elements of the story. So being propped up in the hospital bed for 3 days, I didn't move much. And my whole body was just out of sorts. I noticed a little bit of tenderness in the left shoulder, but not really. So when I was being given my discharge papers, the nurse who was going through everything, talking about the medication I had to take, talking about, these are the warning signs and symptoms that you want to look out for, she said, did they tell you about the shoulder fracture? I said,
no. She was like, so you're going to have to follow up with an orthopedic surgeon on this? And you're like, wait, what? Like,
mm-hmm. Well, and they said, and she said, you have a fracture in your shoulder. And at that time, I believe she only told me about the one fracture that I had in my arm. I said, okay, well, no, nobody said anything about that, and I really didn't notice it. And so after she went through all of the discharge instructions, she had to leave and take care of, I guess, the processing of those discharge papers. I stood up and I was saying to Carrie, I don't know if that's right. I don't feel any pain there. And I went and rolled my shoulders, and that's when I felt it. And I think at that point, whenever I did, I maybe partially dislocated or just moved it in a very awkward position. And whoa, okay, I feel that. And I was able to reposition my shoulder to where it was back in place. So, I took that injury very seriously at that point, but I didn't really understand the full extent. So Carrie took me home that evening, Friday evening, and it was nice to be back home. I think at that time we had anticipated maybe learning what the pathology results were about a week or so.
Well, I think from that point, it was still like 2 weeks. They said a week something should come in.
Okay.
But by 2 weeks, everything will be good and everything will be done.
Okay.
At that point in time, because we had to call, because you also had to get your staples taken out. So they just kind of put them together, and you had to get your staples taken out 10 to 14 days afterwards. And so it said your doctor's appointment would be on the 25th. That they already had something scheduled, but just call back to make sure.
Yeah.
And then whenever I finally did call, they said it was on the 22nd.
Okay.
So that's whenever everything was supposed to be. We were supposed to get the results back on the 22nd of January. Results back and your staples taken out.
Taken out. Okay. And then I was told to schedule a follow-up appointment with an orthopedic surgeon.
And your primary care physician.
And the primary care physician, right. So on the ride home, I was able to contact the orthopedic surgeon, who just so happens to be my cousin, who has an office out here in Greensburg. So got that scheduled and went home that night. It was rather late.
Yeah, because we had to wait for the 2 hours for the pharmacy to
pick up the medications. Yeah. So I don't remember all that much about what happened that evening, other than this next event. So I was lying in bed. Carrie, after spending the whole week in the hospital, wanted to get cleaned up a little bit. So she was...
Take a
shower, whatever. And so she came back in the room, and I believe at one point I had fallen asleep, but then when I heard her come in the room, I rolled over and to look at her, and my shoulder just rolled out of the socket.
I think it's because you were just so relaxed.
Yeah.
You were just like...
Yeah. And first of all, this is the first time in my life I had ever suffered a fractured bone, and first time I had ever suffered a dislocation. So the pain was, on a scale of 1 to 10, it was probably pretty darn close to a 10. And I couldn't do anything to reposition it to stop the pain. I tried to lie on my back, tried to roll over, move my arm, whatever. I couldn't take care of it. And so here I am, this, just sad sap in my bed, couldn't do anything. Carrie, asked me, "Oh, how can I help you? What can I do?" And I said, I don't know, just call 911. You know, I can't do anything to help myself.
And
you
I was like
can't help
so
me.
hesitant. I'm like,
Yeah.
are you sure I'm calling 911? And you're like screaming in pain. I was like, but am I really calling 911? Like,
Yeah.
am I really doing that?
Yeah. At this point, I had no dignity to retain. So anyway, we called 911. We had 2 young paramedics show up, and they did the best they could to help me, you know, stabilize the arm. But either they didn't know how to pop it back into place, or
I don't think there was anything at that point to do, because you would probably have been, you were laying there for, I would say, a solid 15 minutes.
Okay.
And so I think that at that point it was already kind of like there. Like they couldn't hurry up and put it back in. Like there was nothing else to do. They had to move you, and it was going to hurt to move.
Yeah.
And so I think that they did the best they could.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, there's nothing else. It's going to hurt. It was already out.
Right. No qualms with how they handled me, but anyway, it was certainly humiliating to be, you know, dragged out of my bed and taken downstairs, put in an ambulance, and driven back to Latrobe Hospital, where this journey began. They took care of me there. Well, gave me a painkiller and popped it back into place. So I came home with.
Well, they had to cut your shirts. Like that was like they want to take it. They want to take your hoodie off. Okay, you just had brain surgery. You just got released. Brain surgery, and I was like, he just had brain surgery, you just had tumor removed, and they had a hoodie, you had a hoodie they wanted to take off and slip over your head.
Yeah.
And I was like, no. And she's like, well, we're gonna have to cut it. I was like, cut the shirt.
Yeah.
Like that shouldn't even be a thought.
Yeah.
Cut the shirt. You just had brain surgery and your arm's dislocated. How are they going to take it off your head and off your arm?
But overall, they did a great job. They gave me the painkiller, popped the shoulder back into place. Actually, once they gave me the painkiller, I don't know, it didn't take too long. It knocked me out.
Yeah.
So I don't even remember them popping the shoulder back into place, which was probably a good thing. So that just added to our tumultuous and quite eventful week. So I had a sling there for the weekend. But so we'll fast forward a little bit. Went to see the orthopedic surgeon on Monday or Tuesday of the following week. And he took some x-rays of it and said, well, it looks like when you dislocated, you tore some ligaments in the labrum area, right? And he said, and I told him what had happened and how I had likely had a malignant brain tumor. We were waiting on the results. He said, okay, well, I don't want to do anything here, but it looks like you're probably going to need to have surgery to repair this, but we can't take an MRI. I still had staples in my head. So we were going to wait. And at this point now, we are January 15th. And the results were scheduled to come back on the 22nd. So about a week later. So, you know, this part of the journey, you know, really was just learning how to adjust to my life at home. For the first time in my memory, I was slated to have several weeks off, not much of a schedule. Was reliant on Carrie to get me around places. Because I had the grand mal seizure, my license has been revoked for 6 months minimum. And we'll get into all that later on down the road. So next step on this journey is waiting to see what the test results were. So, and on the same day as Carrie mentioned, I was to get the staples removed. So on that date, on the 22nd, we went back to Presbyterian Hospital, had the staples removed, which was kind of fascinating procedure there. It was painless, essentially. They used a little crimping tool to pull the staples out. How did I have 18?
Yes.
18 staples. And everything.
Why don't you turn your head so they can see?
Sorry.
No,
Does everybody want to see? Right there?
It doesn't even look bad anymore.
Yeah, okay. Yes, my kid said it looks like a baseball horseshoe, which is appropriate, I suppose, since baseball was my favorite sport growing up, and it's one of the sports my kids play. So, I've held off for all these years on a tattoo, and figured I'll take this route. So, anyway, the horseshoe is there. So when to get the staples removed at Presbyterian Hospital, had a follow-up appointment at the Hillman Cancer Center, and we expected to get the pathology test results. and kind of make this part of the story shorter than it was, because it was about a 4-hour
Right.
appointment there.
And we didn't. There it is.
Yeah.
Done. 4 hours done.
We actually got mixed results, because initially we met with a resident doctor, and I'm not sure what happened there, but we were told. Let me kind of preface this next part by saying, of course we were doing our research into what the possibilities could be, and we learned about the different grades of brain tumors and so forth.
Whenever you had your surgery, the doctor said, from his calculation, from looking at it, that it probably is malignant, and that it's most likely a grade 2. And so that's what he said, and so that's what we had in the back of our mind. He said, however, he used grade 2, and then he also used aggressive, and those, they don't go together. And so it kind of always wondered, okay, aggressive grade 2, like grade 2 is really not aggressive. So from the research that we've done. Right. And so it was kind of like okay, which one is it then, aggressive or grade 2? Right. When we got there.
And just to provide some context for those of you for whom this is new, because this is actually mostly new to us. So I guess brain tumors are graded 1, 2, 3, and 4, and it's not the same as stage 1, stage 2, stage 4. Some of the terminology that I heard in the past. So feel free to do your own research and see what this is all about. But yeah, so a grade 2 is certainly a very serious brain tumor. Grade 4 is the most serious. So at this point, we're I don't know if I would ever say that I was truly anxious, but
No. I think we both kind of had a feeling that it was going to be bad. Like I don't know. I mean, I know that we talked about this, but I think that we had a feeling that it's going to be worse. And then we figured we'd probably get worse news than better news or good news.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, so when we went to this appointment at Hillman initially, the results that they had, and we were told they were preliminary, and the pathology results, the was it, I guess, the tissue or whatever had to be sent back because it wasn't definitive. But we were told at this time, well, it's likely a grade 2 or a grade 4, and they're treated differently, so we're not ready to make a recommendation for a treatment protocol. And so again, this was the resident doctor who was there. He left the room, and the doctor who I was told that I was going to see before that day was Dr. Mantica, who I understand is a newer doctor at Hillman. And Dr. Mantica then came in, and she had slightly different results as far as what she was able to determine from the initial pathology results that came back. So that's when we were hit with the news. And by the way, our pastor, Pastor Armel, was there with us, with Carrie and with me, and he has been terrific throughout this process in providing just counsel and also helping us to
support.
Yeah, helping us to ask the right questions about the.
Because he's been there, he walked that road before with other family members or others in the church. Or
right. So he was asking questions that we didn't necessarily think of, but so it came down to this point. We were told you are facing either a grade 3 or a grade 4, and so the terms that were thrown out there, we have astrocytoma or a glioblastoma. And again, if you want to learn more about those, quick Google search, you'll find out. The glioblastoma is the most deadly, has the poorest prognosis for lifespan and so forth. And at that point, I think she had a feeling where this might be going. She didn't want to say anything because she said that the results were inconclusive. So we had to schedule another appointment for a follow-up for a week later, which was actually today. So
well, it was actually longer than a week, but
what is like a Wednesday to a Thursday, right? Or so, a Tuesday to a Thursday. Okay. Anyway, a little over a week. So that was today, and this is why we decided that we were going to do this video. Which, by the way, we are doing this video to certainly share information for those who've been asking. We figured it's maybe easier to do it like this than to do it via text message or emails or try to get out to everyone phone calls. I'm going to stop here and just address something. The outpouring of love and support that we've had is incredible. It truly is incredible. For those of you who know my family, the Kale family, it's a huge family and a very loving and supportive family. So, I had several aunts and uncles come visit me in the hospital who have come visit me since I've come home, who have blessed us greatly with meals and
in church, and all the church friends that we had.
Right. I mean,
the kids, their school that they used to go to, or like their
Right. And not just our church that we attend now, which is Lower Highlands Presbyterian Church, but the church that we formerly attended, the church that my uncle attends, my mother-in-law attends, the church that my parents attended. I mean,
and then Rotary.
I had somebody today or yesterday when we went to the Rotary meeting. Shout out to the Latrobe Rotary, because actually I was the president-elect and scheduled to be or slated to become the next president in July. Life throws you a curve, and that's probably not going to happen. But anyway, so to the community as well, the Chamber of Commerce, organizing the meal train, and we haven't had to cook our own meals since I got home.
It's an absolute blessing.
Even
from the day so you went on Monday night. Mm-hmm. Okay, Monday night
on the 7th. Yeah.
Tuesday. Yeah. We had someone from church drop off food. Yeah. Tuesday.
Yeah. And as I mentioned earlier, with 10 children, we're no easy task to cook for, but the grace, the thoughtfulness, the kindness, the generosity that we have received, I don't know what else to say but wow. Thank you so much to everyone out there. Not just the meals, the prayers, the cards, the letters, some of which you can maybe see up there that we've hung, the flowers, the plants that everybody has dropped off. Yeah. It is absolutely wonderful to feel the love and the support from people with whom some people I've spent a little bit of time with in a business association. Some people I've spent a lifetime with. My loved ones, former colleagues, and everything. And I can't thank everybody enough. And I have written a couple posts on Facebook and have expressed how truly blessed I feel. And please know that that's not fabricated, not putting on a front. That's truly how I feel, and so we feel, and that's why we wanted to do this video together to document our journey, because one thing that I quickly realized upon coming home is, and I say this with all sensitivity to everybody, everybody who has shown me love, starting with my wife Carrie and my children and my family and on out. In a weird way, and I shouldn't say it's a weird way, because I know that it comes from my faith in God, but in a weird way, this hasn't been all that difficult for me. And it certainly could be a lot worse. The most difficult part of this situation for me is seeing the pain and suffering and anguish that it's causing for my loved ones. But for Carrie, I couldn't imagine being in her shoes. I couldn't imagine being in the shoes of my children and thinking about the very real possibility that their dad's not going to be around for all that much longer. So today we were supposed to get kind of the conclusive final results, the diagnosis.
Wrap it up.
Wrap it up.
Finally have a name to it.
The treatment plan actually is already underway. I kind of skipped over that part of the story, which initially it seems like we're going to end up over at the UPMC Arnold Palmer Cancer Center, which is a godsend. It's 10 minutes away. So rather than having to travel to the Hillman Cancer Center, which is a good hour drive for us, once the radiation and chemotherapy protocol starts here, which will initially be for 30 days, particularly for the radiation, it's 5 days a week for 6 weeks.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then the chemotherapy will coincide, and that will actually be 7 days a week for 6 weeks. That we would have to go down there, and then we'd have all these issues with setting up babysitters and so forth. For extended periods of time, travel, expense, and so forth. Here we have the Arnold Palmer Cancer Center just outside of Latrobe in Unity Township, where we'll be able to go drive 10, 15 minutes, do this, radiation thing, come back.
Do this radiation thing.
Yeah. And it'll be about an hour total time. So, that being said, back to where we were supposed to today get the final diagnosis. We did not. We did not get the final diagnosis, but in meeting with the neuro-oncologist, Dr. Mantica, she was able to tell us that she is, and I believe I'm accurately quoting her number, 90% certain that we are dealing with the worst case scenario, which is the glioblastoma.
The grade 4.
Yeah, grade 4. If you go on the internet and you read about it, the lifespan, the statistics show that it's short term. It's short term. And I'll be candid because I want to be candid with everybody. And if I'm saying too much, you just tell me to stop. But
Stop. Go ahead.
Okay.
I felt good.
I'm sure it did. I am in kind of the best situation from the standpoint that I'm very young to have this disease. Most people who get this are in their 60s or older. Being 35, everything else with my test results came back very positively. My heart's in good shape, blood pressure's in good shape. I haven't had any medical issues other than I had a appendectomy when I was 23. But I've been someone who's managed to stay out of the doctor's office, managed to stay out of the hospitals for most of my life. And so other than this brain tumor, my body is relatively healthy. I'm young. They think I'll take well to the treatments. So even in being in that category, the average lifespan of someone in my position, in my condition, is 2 to 3 years.
Which actually, I felt honestly excited about, because everything else said 12 to 17 months. And so whenever you hear double that, longer and double that, I was just excited. I was like, really? And she's like, I know that's slow. And I was like, well, no, actually, it was. I was rejoicing because it was more than what the internet said, or different things were like. And even whenever we talked to the kids about it, or I told the kids later, Tyke was like, that's great, and we were excited. We were so low, it was so.
What we had thought originally.
Yes, yeah.
Some of what you read out there with the statistics and so forth.
Months.
Because most of what's out there includes all age groups, and so when you combine all age groups, the life expectancy certainly comes down. But there's that, and then what is somewhat scary for me is, one of the questions I had asked the doctors is, well, what does the demise process looks like? What does it look like? Is it a matter of I'm going to be to move on with my life and kind of look normal, live a fairly normal life, and then all of a sudden, bam, I have one of these episodes again, have the seizure, and then I don't recover from it? Or is it more of a gradual decline where I start to lose my mental faculties and so forth? And the initial answer was, it tends to be gradual. And Dr. Mantica told me today that typically somebody in my situation will have a reoccurrence of a brain tumor within 12 to 18 months. It can come back. It likely would come back in a similar area of my brain, but it could come back in another area of my brain. It could be operable again, or it could be inoperable. So let me just kind of wrap up this first video, and I can see we went on much longer than I initially anticipated, but
it was the first one.
It was the first one.
You had to give them like a little background.
Right.
The other ones would be like checkups.
Right. Yeah. And so going forward, we certainly don't intend to do 45 or 50-minute videos. I know. Hopefully, we'll try to keep it to 10 or so. And I don't know now. I don't know. If it's something we're gonna be able to do daily or do a few times a week. We'll see. As
I'm
it goes.
saying that because like your new talking thing. This whole
right.
new
Yes.
Brandon talking.
So one of the things
there's that
interestingly has come out of this is they did tell me that this portion of my brain where the surgery was performed, that is kind of the emotional center, right?
Temporal lobe.
The temporal lobe, but that they said as far as being able to pick up on social cues, that might affect me emotionally. So thus far, one of the biggest changes that I've noticed in my brain is in the resection they removed my reticence, my reluctance to speak. In the past, I've been told, at least I thought I was a pretty good listener, and I would try to listen first and before I would talk. Now I just talk. You probably can see from this now over 46-minute video that I probably talked a majority of the time, right?
Yeah, but you had to.
Right. So I have no reluctance to speak, and sometimes it's good, and other times it's probably not so good. Because in our relationship over the years, Carrie's the one who did a lot of the talking.
I know. Now you're encroaching upon my space.
Right. And now we just talk over each other constantly.
Yeah.
Right. So that's an adjustment. I don't even know how I got off on that tangent there, but anyway, I said that they must have done something to that part of my brain. I was going somewhere with this. Where was I going? Oh, the fact that we're going to try to keep these videos short and succinct. This one is certainly not that. So we are hoping to know over the next few days what the final diagnosis is, but we pretty much know.
Oh, she also said that in order to be classified as a grade 4, that it has to check 3 boxes.
Yeah,
and she said
criteria.
Yeah, and she said it checked all 3.
It did check all 3.
But that one thing is just weird on it.
Yeah, there was some abnormality in the genetic structure or something.
Yes, of one thing.
Yeah, and so that was the only thing that they were waiting on. The potential good news is I might be eligible for a clinical trial. It involves immunotherapy, and given again my age and my relative good health, I might be an eligible participant in that. That remains to be seen, but it's something that we're open to. Otherwise, the chemo and radiation protocol, which they call it the standard of treatment, it will begin. Standard of care.
Yeah.
Okay, will begin on February 11th, and again, if we move forward with that, that will happen here at the UPMC Arnold Palmer Cancer Center. Let me just finish this video by saying thank you again to everyone for their expressions of love and support, and thank you for your prayers. Carrie and I both are strong in our faith, and we believe in the power of prayer. And we have had no shortage of people tell us how much they're praying for us, how they have told their church and then their friend's church. And so by our understanding, we have churches across the nation and even internationally that are praying for us. And we welcome all the prayers that we can get. And I tell people as they tell me that they're praying for me, I appreciate your prayers. Please pray for Carrie, because this journey is probably, no, not probably, this journey is more difficult for her, and for the children, and certainly for the rest of our loved ones than it is for me. I certainly want to be here for the long run. I want to be here for my family. I want to be here for Carrie and the kids to see them graduate high school and go through all the life events that we thought we would be here for. But something like this hits you, and what are you going to do? You just realize what you have. You count your blessings.